My name is Arthur, and I work the night shift at the Old City Library. It's a job most people wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, not because of low pay or demanding patrons. Quite the opposite, actually. The pay is excellent, and there are no patrons to speak of after midnight. No, the reason is the rules. The very strict rules. I took the job out of desperation. My last gig, a security guard position at a derelict mall, ended abruptly when the mall was condemned. Bills piled up, and when I saw the ad for night librarian assistant must be detail-oriented and punctual, I figured, how hard could it be? It's a library, right? Quiet, dusty, full of books. Boy, was I wrong. The interview was less of an interview and more of a recitation. Mr. Blackwood, the head librarian, a gaunt man with eyes that seemed to have seen too many moonless nights, didn't ask about my experience. He just read from a laminated sheet. Rule number 1, he intoned, his voice dry as old parchment. The doors lock precisely at midnight, no exceptions. Once you're in, you're in. Rule number 2, the main power dims to 20% at 12:05 a.m. Do not attempt to override this. Flashlights are provided and are mandatory. Rule number 3, you will conduct hourly patrols of all 7 floors. Do not deviate from the established route. Ever. Rule number 4, if you hear a sound that isn't silence, you will immediately proceed to the nearest designated safe zone and remain there until the sound ceases. Do not investigate. Rule number 5, under no circumstances are you to enter the restricted archives on the 7th floor. The door will be locked. Do not attempt to open it. Rule number 6, if a book falls from a shelf, no matter how close or how loud, you are to leave it. Do not pick it up. Do not even look at it directly. Rule number 7, you are not alone. You will never be alone. Acknowledge this fact, but do not interact with anything that is not explicitly part of your job duties. Rule number 8, your shift ends at 6:00 a.m. At 5:55 a.m., you will proceed to the main entrance. The doors will unlock at 6:00 a.m. Leave immediately. Do not linger. Rule number 9, if you see something that defies explanation, you are to ignore it. Pretend it isn't there. Your sanity depends on it. And finally, rule number 10, do not, under any circumstances, allow yourself to fall asleep. Not even for a moment. He didn't ask if I understood. He just stared at me with those ancient eyes waiting. I nodded, a knot forming in my stomach. It sounded like something out of a bad horror movie, but the pay was good, and I was desperate. I rationalized it as an eccentric old man's quirks. Maybe they'd had a break-in once, and these were extreme security measures. My first night was unsettling. The library itself is an imposing structure, built in the early 1900s, all dark wood, high ceilings, and labyrinthine stacks. At midnight, the heavy oak doors clunked shut with a finality that echoed through the vast main hall. At 12:05 a.m., the lights flickered, hummed, and then dropped to a deep, eerie twilight. The silence that descended was not the comfortable silence of a sleeping building, but a profound, almost oppressive void, broken only by the hum of ancient fluorescent lights and the creaks and groans of the old structure settling. I started my patrols, flashlight in hand, a thin beam cutting through the gloom. The air grew colder the higher I went, the scent of old paper and dust becoming more pungent. On the 4th floor, I felt it for the first time, a subtle shift in the atmosphere, like an invisible curtain being drawn. My breath caught in my throat. I told myself it was just the old building, drafts, my imagination. Then, on the 6th floor, I heard it. A faint thump. It sounded like a heavy book dropping. Rule number 6 slammed into my mind. If a book falls from a shelf, do not pick it up. Do not even look at it directly. My heart hammered against my ribs. My flashlight beam was pointed ahead, unwavering. I forced myself to keep moving, my pace quickening. The sound didn't repeat. When I rounded the corner, I risked a quick glance. A large leather-bound tome lay on the floor in the shadowy aisle, spine up, looking almost like a discarded body. I averted my eyes and hurried on. The rest of the night passed in a blur of escalating paranoia. Every shadow seemed to stretch and writhe. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps besides my own. By 5:55 a.m., I was a wreck, sweat plastering my uniform to my skin. I practically sprinted to the main entrance. The relief when the heavy doors clicked open at 6 o'clock a.m. was immense. I burst out into the pre-dawn chill, gasping for air, not daring to look back. I almost didn't go back for a second night, but the bills were still there, and the thought of admitting defeat after one shift gnawed at me. Mr. Blackwood was impassive when I reported in the next evening. He simply handed me a fresh battery for my flashlight. The second night was worse. The silence felt deeper, more watchful. As I patrolled the 3rd floor, I distinctly heard a whisper. It was faint, a dry, papery rustle of sound, like someone turning the pages of an old book, very, very slowly, right behind me. Rule number 4. If you hear a sound that isn't silence, you will immediately proceed to the nearest designated safe zone and remain there until the sound ceases. Do not investigate. I froze. My mind screamed at me to turn around, to shine my light. But Blackwood's voice, cold and firm, echoed in my head. Do not investigate. I fumbled for the nearest safe zone. A small, unused staff office on the same floor, just a few feet away. I stumbled inside, slammed the door shut, and leaned against it, breathing heavily. The whispers continued for what felt like an eternity, growing slightly louder, more distinct, but still unintelligible. They seemed to circle the office door, brushing against the wood. Then, they stopped. The silence that followed was even more terrifying than the whispers. I stayed there for another 5 minutes, heart still racing, before slowly, cautiously, opening the door and continuing my patrol. Nothing was amiss. No one was there. But I knew then. Rule number 7. You are not alone. You will never be alone. It wasn't just a figure of speech. Nights turned into weeks, and weeks into months. I developed a routine, a rhythm to my fear. The strict rules became my mantra, my shield against the encroaching dread. I learned to ignore the fleeting shadows in my peripheral vision, the occasional cold spots, the feeling of being watched. I became a master of averted gazes and quick steps. One night, on the 5th floor, my flashlight beam briefly illuminated a figure at the end of an aisle. It was tall, thin, and undeniably human-shaped, standing perfectly still, its back to me. My blood ran cold. Rule number 9. If you see something that defies explanation, you are to ignore it. Pretend it isn't there. Your sanity depends on it. My entire body screamed at me to run, to scream, to do something. But I tightened my grip on the flashlight, forced my eyes straight ahead, and walked past the aisle as if I hadn't seen a thing. My heart was a drum in my chest, and I could feel the invisible weight of its presence as I passed. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I kept walking, my footsteps echoing unnaturally loud in the silence, until I was well clear. That night, I spent a full hour in a safe zone, trembling, waiting for dawn. The library, I realized, wasn't just a building. It was a container. And at night, something else was let loose within its walls, something ancient, patient, and intensely curious. The 4th month was when the book started moving, not falling, moving. I'd conduct my hourly patrols, and the shelves would be perfectly ordered. But on my next round, a book would be slightly ajar, or rotated a few degrees, or even a different book entirely would be sitting on a shelf where I knew it hadn't been before. Sometimes I'd swear I saw a faint, finger-like indentation on a dusty cover, as if someone had just placed it down. Rule number 6 took on a new horrifying meaning. If a book fell, it was an accident. If it moved, it was deliberate, and something was doing the deliberating. One particularly grueling shift, exhaustion began to set in. It was around 3 a.m. I was on the 2nd floor, surrounded by rows of ancient periodicals. My eyes felt gritty, my limbs heavy. I leaned against a stack for just a second, just to rest my eyes. A sharp metallic clink jolted me awake. My head snapped up. I hadn't realized I'd even closed my eyes. The sound had come from directly in front of me, in the dim light of my flashlight. Lying on the polished wooden floor, precisely at my feet, was a single tarnished brass key. It looked old, heavy, and very real. My stomach clenched. Rule number 10. Do not, under any circumstances, allow yourself to fall asleep. Not even for a moment. And then I remembered rule number 5. Under no circumstances are you to enter the restricted archives on the 7th floor. The door will be locked. Do not attempt to open it. My gaze instinctively went to the key. It was a skeleton key, intricately carved, with a distinctive, almost ornate bow. It looked like something that would unlock a very old, very important door. A door like the one to the restricted archives. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through my exhaustion. This wasn't just a creepy occurrence anymore. This was a test, or an invitation. I felt a subtle presence behind me, just outside the radius of my flashlight, a silent, waiting observer. It wanted me to pick up the key. It wanted me to go to the 7th floor. I stared at the key, my mind a whirlwind. My rational brain screamed at me to leave it, to ignore it. But another part of me, a dark, rebellious part, whispered, "What if it's the only way out? What if it's an answer?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I forced myself to avert my eyes, to step carefully around the key, not even glancing at it again. I continued my patrol, my heart pounding a desperate rhythm against my ribs. Every step away from that key felt like a monumental effort. I could feel its unseen gaze on my back, urging me, tempting me. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. For the rest of that night, I kept my eyes wide open, fueled by pure, unadulterated terror. The library felt colder, more hostile. The hum of the light seemed to pulse with an unseen energy. I made it to 5:55 a.m. feeling like I'd run a marathon. As I bolted out the door at 6 a.m., I swore I heard a faint, disappointed sigh echo from within the library's depths. The next night, the key was gone. The incidents became more frequent, more personal. On the 3rd floor, I saw my own reflection in a darkened window, but it wasn't quite right. My eyes in the reflection were wide, black orbs, and a faint, almost imperceptible smile played on its lips. I quickly looked away, my stomach churning. Rule number 9. Another night, as I ascended the grand staircase, I heard a child's laughter, soft, tinkling, echoing from the children's section on the first floor. It wasn't joyful laughter. It was hollow, like wind chimes in a graveyard. Rule number 4. I fled to the nearest safe zone, a small, dusty storage closet, and huddled there until the laughter faded, replaced by the familiar, suffocating silence. The most unnerving occurrence happened about 2 months ago. I was on my patrol of the 7th floor, the floor where the restricted archive stood, its door always locked, always shadowed. As I approached the archive door, I noticed something new. Scratched into the old, dark wood, as if by fingernails, were faint, desperate marks. And beneath them, carved with chilling precision, a single word. Help. My breath hitched. My flashlight beam trembled. My eyes darted around the empty hallway. The scratching was fresh. It couldn't have been there before. Who made it? And why? Rule number 5 screamed in my head. Do not enter the restricted archives. Do not attempt to open it. But what if someone was trapped inside? What if the things that roamed the library at night had a prisoner? I stood there for a long moment, caught between terror and a horrifying sense of responsibility. My training, my rules, screamed at me to ignore it, to walk away. But the word help burrowed into my mind, a tiny shard of humanity in a place of unnatural dread. I lifted my hand, my fingers hovering inches from the scratched wood. My heart thundered. I could feel a cold draft emanating from beneath the door. A whisper, so faint it could have been my own mind, seemed to slither out from the cracks. Open it, please. Just as my fingertips brushed the cold wood, the distinct sound of a heavy book slamming shut reverberated from the floor below. Thump! My hand snapped back as if burned. Rule number 6, that wasn't just a book falling. It was a warning, a powerful, immediate warning. The library was telling me, in its own terrifying way, to back off. I stumbled away from the door, my legs weak. I continued my patrol, walking faster than I ever had, not daring to look back at that word, that desperate plea. I didn't stop until I reached the main staircase and descended to the lower floors, putting as much distance as possible between myself and the restricted archives. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I kept seeing the word help etched into the darkness behind my eyelids. Lately, the library has been changing. The air is heavier, colder. The shadows seem to have a deeper quality, a more solid presence. Sometimes I catch glimpses of things that are almost there, a fleeting shape at the end of an aisle, just beyond the reach of my flashlight. The sound of a page turning, just out of sync with my own movements. A faint, sweet, cloying smell, like something decaying, then gone. The most disturbing change is the temperature fluctuations. Entire sections of the library will suddenly drop to an icy chill, then just as quickly return to normal. It's as if something is moving through the building, dragging pockets of unearthly cold in its wake. Last night, I was on the 5th floor, meticulously following my route. As I walked down an aisle of ancient tomes, I heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible scratching sound, coming from within the shelves themselves. It was delicate, rhythmic, like tiny claws or fingernails tapping against wood. I froze, my flashlight beam steady. Rule number 4. If you hear a sound that isn't silence, you will immediately proceed to the nearest designated safe zone and remain there until the sound ceases. But the scratching was so small, so subtle, almost shy. My safe zone was a long way off, and besides, I'd been ignoring things for so long. What was one more? Curiosity, a dangerous, insidious thing, began to prick at me. I told myself it was just a mouse, or settling wood, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. I took a single, slow step closer to the shelf where the sound seemed to emanate. The scratching paused. I held my breath. Then it resumed, a fraction louder. My hand, of its own accord, reached out towards the shelf. It was the section on ancient languages. My fingers brushed against the spines of thick, leather-bound books. The scratching continued, now definitely coming from inside one of the books. A book, bound in dark, unmarked leather, with no title on its spine, was slightly out of place. My fingers wrapped around it. It felt unnaturally cold. As I pulled it gently from the shelf, the scratching stopped. My heart was hammering. This wasn't a book falling. This was me choosing to interact. This was breaking rule number 6. I brought the book closer to my flashlight. It was heavy, and the leather felt rough, almost like dried skin. There was no title, no author, nothing. Just an unmarked black book. Then I noticed it. On the front cover, almost invisible against the dark leather, was a faint, embossed symbol. It was a swirling, intricate design, reminiscent of an eye, but twisted, almost predatory. As I stared at it, the symbol seemed to shimmer, to subtly deepen in color, as if absorbing the dim light. And then I heard it. A faint, almost inaudible whisper, coming not from the book, but from everywhere and nowhere at once. You looked. The voice was like dry leaves skittering across pavement, ancient and infinitely patient. It was full of a terrible, unfeeling joy. My blood ran cold. My grip on the book tightened. I had broken the rules. I had looked. I had touched. Panic seized me. I wanted to drop the book, to run, to scream. But my feet felt rooted to the floor. The whisper came again, closer now, a dry breath against my ear, though no one was there. You opened the door. I dropped the book as if it were a burning coal. It hit the wooden floor with a sickening thud that echoed deafeningly in the oppressive silence. As it lay there open, a single page seemed to flutter in an unseen draft. On that page, illuminated by my trembling flashlight, was a grotesque, detailed drawing of a human eye, staring out from the paper with chilling intensity. Its iris was the same swirling predatory symbol I'd seen on the cover. I didn't wait. I turned and ran. I didn't care about the safe zones or the route or anything else. I ran down the aisles, down the stairs, a primal scream caught in my throat. I could feel the presence behind me, no longer subtle, no longer distant. It was close. It was hunting. The cold pockets in the air were no longer random. They followed me, icy tendrils reaching out. I could hear it now too, a shuffling sound, like bare feet dragging on polished wood, growing closer, closer, step for deliberate step. It wasn't running, it was walking, leisurely, enjoying the hunt. I burst onto the ground floor, gasping for air, my lungs burning. The main entrance was ahead, a beacon of hope in the gloom. I glanced at the clock, 5:45 a.m., too early. The doors wouldn't open. The shuffling sound was right behind me now. I could feel the frigid air on my neck. My mind screamed, "Run faster!" But my legs felt like lead. Then I saw it. In the massive, polished marble floor of the main hall, a faint, almost invisible ripple. It was like water, but it was solid. And then, from the ripple, a hand began to emerge. Long, skeletal fingers, impossibly thin, tipped with nails that looked like ancient, yellowed bone. It was reaching slowly, deliberately, for my ankle. I screamed then. A raw, terrified sound ripped from my throat. I leaped forward, stumbling, scrambling towards the main doors. The clock ticked over. 5:55 a.m. I threw myself against the doors, clawing at the handles. They were still locked. 10 more minutes. 10 minutes until 6 a.m. The shuffling was closer. I heard a wet, clicking sound, like bones grinding together. I risked a glance over my shoulder. Standing there, in the dim light, was a figure. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs appearing disjointed, like a marionette with its strings cut. Its head was tilted at an unnatural angle. It had no face, just a smooth, featureless expanse where eyes should have been. Two dark, swirling symbols, identical to the one on the book, glowed faintly. And its hands, they were long, elongated, with those horrifying bone-like claws. It took another step, then another, slowly closing the distance. Each step was accompanied by that sickening, bone-on-wood click. "You broke the rules," the voice whispered, directly into my mind. It wasn't the dry rustle from before. This was a legion of voices, all speaking at once, ancient and suffocating. I whimpered, pressing myself against the heavy doors. My eyes darted to the clock. 5:58 a.m. 2 minutes. 2 eternal minutes. The creature raised one of its impossibly long arms. One of its clawed fingers slowly, deliberately pointed at me. "Now, you stay." I could feel a powerful, invisible force pressing against me, trying to drag me back. The air around me grew impossibly cold. My vision started to blur at the edges. 5:59 a.m. I closed my eyes, bracing for whatever was coming. I could hear the clicks of its feet, closer now, inches away. The scent of decay was overwhelming. Then, at precisely 6 a.m., a loud, resounding clunk echoed through the hall. The heavy oak doors to the library swung open with a groan. My eyes snapped open. The first rays of dawn were just breaking through the windows, casting weak, pale light into the main hall. The creature was gone. The shuffling, the cold, the scent, all gone. The library was silent once more, just an old building waking up to a new day. I didn't hesitate. I stumbled out, gasping for breath, into the chill morning air. I didn't look back. I just walked, faster and faster, until I was miles away. I never went back to the library. I packed my meager belongings, cancelled my phone, and left the city. I'm writing this from a small, dingy motel room, hundreds of miles away, but I can still feel it. The cold, the whispers, the sensation of being watched. I see the swirling eye symbol everywhere now, in the patterns of wood grain, in the swirls of cream in my coffee, in the condensation on a window pane. And sometimes, late at night, when the world outside falls silent, I hear it. The faint, delicate scratching, like fingernails on wood. And then, a dry, papery whisper, just at the edge of hearing. "You looked, and I know, with a chilling certainty, that the rules weren't just to keep me safe from the library. They were to keep the library contained. And I, Arthur, broke them. And now, something has been unleashed, and it remembers me, and it is coming."